Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we are getting into arguably the single most defining decision of our entire lives, right? How we actually secure our livelihoods. Now, historically, we've kind of approached this monumental choice with, well, the analytical rigor of a total gamble. But today we are ditching the guesswork. We're looking at the sovereign capital theorem, a scientific architecture for career choice. It's a mathematically sound way to build your future. Let's dive in.
Okay, let's dive into this. Seriously, how much of your life is left to chance? Think about it for a second. Most of us literally spend more time researching which flat-screen TV or smartphone to buy than we do analyzing our own 40-year career trajectory. It's wild. Career choice is this massive decision we make under radical uncertainty. Yet we usually base it on, tiny sample sizes, delayed feedback, or just whatever our friends are doing. We're essentially treating our futures like a coin toss. But what happens when that coin lands in a labor market that looks absolutely nothing like the one we actually trained for?
Well, to grasp the sheer urgency of this, we have to look at the macroeconomic reality. 22%. According to the World Economic Forum's latest data, we are facing a stark 22% global structural labor market churn over the next 5 years alone. So what does that actually mean for you and me? It means effectively more than 1 in 5 jobs will either completely vanish, newly emerge, or fundamentally transform in just half a decade. That is the chaotic reality of our modern AI-driven job market. And when we break down that massive structural churn, the sheer scale of the transformation is just staggering. By the year 2030, we're looking at 170 million new roles being created, mostly driven by the AI and green energy transitions, while, on the flip side, 92 million existing roles are expected to be permanently displaced. The old rule was, pick a major, ride it out for 40 years. Today, that rule is entirely dead. The ground is constantly shifting underneath us, and we absolutely need a new framework to survive it. Which brings us to a strategic operating system for surviving all that chaos, the sovereign capital theorem. Developed by Professor Dr. Kapileshwar Mishra, this original decision-theoretic framework completely reconceives how we select our careers. Instead of that vague, one-off advice of, quote, finding your passion, the theorem gives us a literal cheat code. It frames career choice as a constrained optimization problem. Basically, it balances 3 interacting stocks: your capability, your portable capital, and your psychological reserve. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. This isn't your standard back-of-the-napkin pros and cons list. No way. We are looking at a multi-stage, highly dynamic pipeline designed to evaluate your career as an interconnected system. It borrows from the absolute highest levels of decision science to ensure that your occupational choices are actually resilient against that massive labor market churn we were just talking about. To build this ironclad foundation, Professor Mishra synthesized the work of what is essentially a literal council of wisdom. We're talking about 6 Nobel Memorial Prize-recognized theories. Instead of guessing, he borrowed from the absolute best. He uses Herbert Simon and Amartya Sen to define what a good job actually is, Gary Becker to measure your skills, Kahneman and Tversky to protect your mental health, and Harry Markowitz and Shapley and Roth to diversify your risk and find that two-sided market fit. It really proves that these timeless laws of economics can be directly applied to protect your personal livelihood. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that at the heart of the theorem is the vocational capital equilibrium, or VCE model. Okay, don't let the algebra intimidate you here. This isn't terrifying math. It's actually a really beautiful philosophical balance of life, just expressed as an equation. It formally calculates the value of your career over time by balancing what you are capable of doing, the capital you acquire, and then subtracting the psychological cost of doing it. Let's break down those 3 vital components. So, the first stock is capability, represented by the letter C. Anchored in Amartya Sen's Nobel-winning capability approach, this forces us to evaluate a career not just by the entry-level salary, but by the real freedoms and agency it actually confers to you. Ask yourself right now, does your current role just pay the bills, or does it actively give you the freedom to make meaningful choices in your life? Maximizing your compounding capability over time is far more critical than simply chasing the highest starting paycheck. The second stock is portable capital, or K. Drawing directly from Gary Becker's human capital theory, the theorem insists we treat our early career not as this magical time to simply find our passion, but as an aggressive capital expenditure in ourselves. The velocity of your learning is what matters most here. You absolutely must prioritize transferable meta skills, things like analytical reasoning and adaptive learning, over brittle domain-specific knowledge that, let's be honest, AI might just automate away tomorrow. Finally, we have the lost term psychological reserve, or L. Think of this as your burnout budget. Relying on Kahneman and Tversky's famous prospect theory, the framework recognizes that unmanaged stress actively erodes your compounding capabilities. Plus, it accounts for our natural loss aversion. I mean, it's exactly why we stay in terrible jobs just because they're familiar, right? We fear the immediate pain of quitting way more than we value the long-term gain of a better career. So downside protection here is incredibly valuable.
So, the crucial point is understanding satisficing. Our cognitive bandwidth is limited. Trying to constantly optimize and find that single perfect job, it'll usually just make you miserable. But thanks to Herbert Simon's concept of bounded rationality, we can relieve a lot of that intense anxiety. Instead of endless optimization, we satisfice. We set explicit, non-negotiable minimum floors for our income, our autonomy, and our learning velocity. Once an option clears those defensive thresholds, boom, you act.
But how do you actually test these career options without completely ruining your life in the process? Enter the information value ladder. It's a highly practical way to resolve career uncertainties sequentially. You always start cheap. Spend a few hours on desk research. Still interested? Okay, spend a few days doing informational interviews with people actually doing the work. Past that, maybe shadow them or do a micro project for a week. Only after passing those early stages do you commit months to an internship. You literally never let sunk cost inertia trap you in a bad career experiment.
Let's move to and see how this builds a safety net using a barbell risk allocation. Applying Harry Markowitz's portfolio theory to your actual life choices, you put about 80 to 90% of your time into a stable anchor. That's your cash flow generating role where you build core mastery. The remaining 10 to 20%? That goes into convex bets. These are your high upside explorations, side projects, and novel skills that essentially diversify your risk without ever threatening your primary safety net.
Ultimately, any scientific career choice you make has to be logically defensible. Imagine you're a defense attorney prepping a huge case. You need to be able to defend this career choice to a skeptical peer, to a court, and most importantly, to your future self. So the framework concludes with a 5-point legal logical robustness test. Did you do your due diligence? Have you consulted stakeholders? Is this decision reversible? Have you audited the contracts? What's the 7-year retrospective look like? This just guarantees your choice is deeply grounded in reality.
So, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative question today. If your current career path was put on trial today, right now, could it actually pass this legal, logical robustness test? The sovereign capital theorem doesn't promise some magical, guaranteed perfect outcome, but by treating your career choice as a disciplined, mathematically sound, evidence-based practice, you equip yourself with the absolute ultimate asset, a logically protected future in an age of immense uncertainty. Thanks for joining this explainer, and we'll see you next time.